What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our Big Ten channel. We're going to preview the 2024 schedule for the Maryland Terrapins here in this video. Before we get to 2024, let's look back at the schedule from 2023. Here was the schedule from last season for Maryland, and you can see Virginia in the non-conference. That was their toughest non-conference game, so not a very tough non-conference schedule. You look at who they played out of the West. They did lose 2 games to the West, Illinois and Northwestern, but they beat Nebraska on the road. It didn't really matter who you played out of the West, honestly. That division was, everybody was pretty much the same. I guess you probably wanted to avoid Iowa. I don't know that Iowa's even that much better than the rest of the teams in that division. But of course, no more divisions this year. Here's the 2024 schedule, and let's break it down. First, the non-conference, they played UConn, at Virginia, and Villanova. So not a very tough non-conference schedule, although I think Virginia could be pretty good this year, and that game is on the road. So I don't think that's a guaranteed win for Maryland. Could wind up being a bit of a tough one. They should be the better team, but we'll see how much Virginia improves. They maybe didn't have a great record last year, but I saw signs of improvement last season, and if they take that next step this year, they could be a decent team. Their home schedule includes, again, UConn and Villanova. Then they got Michigan State, Northwestern, USC, Rutgers, and Iowa. So because they play a non-conference road game, they'll get 5 home games in the conference. That's pretty much how it always works. And then they'll play 4 conference games on the road along with Virginia. So Michigan State, Northwestern, USC, Rutgers, Iowa. You know, really, these are all winnable games. I don't know if there's a game here you'd say Maryland can't win. Obviously, USC will be tough. Iowa will be tough. Northwestern could be tough, but winnable games, and playing at home obviously going to be big. The road schedule, again, there's Virginia. There's a tricky game against Indiana. I think this team could surprise some people this year. Minnesota, I think it's going to be improved this year. That'll be a tough one as well. Oregon, obviously, really tough. Penn State, really tough. Those are going to be the 2 toughest games on the schedule. Again, at Oregon and at Penn State. So let's go week by week. We'll start with UConn, August 31st. Then they'll play Michigan State on September 7th. And then Virginia on September 14th on the road. So they do get a Big Ten game in week 2 there against Michigan State. They play Villanova on the 21st and then go on the road to play Indiana on the 28th. So you look at that first month of the season. Technically UConn game is in August, but whatever. The first 5 games of the season, manageable, but Michigan State could be a little tricky. We'll see how good they are. Virginia on the road, Indiana on the road. So it's one of those where, 5-0 is definitely a possibility, but they could slip up and lose a couple of games in there as well. So that's going to be the key to the season, I think, is getting off to a good start, getting off to a 5-0 start, which they should. But again, it's not going to be a guarantee. Then they get a bye week. So if you're 5-0 going into the bye week, you've got some confidence. And they'll play Northwestern on October 12th. That'll be a revenge game for Maryland. Then USC on the 19th. Then it'll be a tough one on the road at Minnesota on October 26th. If they're able to go 5-0 to start, and then, again, beat Northwestern and USC at home, those will be tough, but they can win those games. Could be 7-0 going into their first really tough road game, and that's at Minnesota, and even tougher the next week against Oregon, although they do have a bye week in between Minnesota and Oregon, so that's the good news. They'll play Rutgers on the 16th, then Iowa on November 23rd, and they'll close things out with Penn State on November 30th. That game also going to be on the road. So it gets a lot tougher. Really after those first 5 games, there aren't any easy games. I mean, Northwestern, USC will be tough. Minnesota on the road will be tough. Oregon on the road, very tough. Rutgers and Iowa will be tough. Penn State on the road. So that's why I say that the key for Maryland is going to be to get off to that 5-0 start. If they can do that, it gives them a chance to have a really good season. But if they lose 1 or 2 games in those first 5, and then the schedule gets a lot tougher, it's going to be really tough for Maryland. Again, this is a schedule that is not horrible. They don't play Michigan. They don't play Ohio State. They don't play Washington. It could be worse. But again, those final 7 games are going to be a pretty good challenge for this Maryland team in a schedule that, I'm not going to say it's one of the tougher ones. I'm not going to say it's one of the easier ones. It's really kind of a schedule that's, I would say, in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten.